So, well, now my flow's gone.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. I am Kramzer here along with Joe and Jason, and we are going to take you on a thrilling ride of the best albums of 1997. All right, so what's going on in 97? To me, it's a little bit of like a mini Brit invasion. Britpop's already taken off, but it's in full swing here. Pretty famous albums by Radiohead and Oasis are released, one matching the acclaim and anticipation, the other maybe not so much. We've also got releases by Blur and Portishead. In the popular realm, the Spice Girls take over. You've got The Verve releasing Urban Hymns, which will make them a ton of money with the song Bittersweet Symphony. That money will disappear soon after as the Rolling Stones complain that it's ripping off one of their old deep cuts, and they win the lawsuit. You've also got happening a bit of a reunion with the original Black Sabbath members. They'll play some shows together in Birmingham, England. And along the UK Union Jack vibes, Austin Powers is released in theaters, one of the all-time great comedies. Soundtracks kind of have a big year with Titanic, and the re-release of Star Wars trilogy, along with the soundtrack, gets a lot of notoriety. Pretty big year for Notorious B.I.G. as he becomes the first ill-fated artists to have two #1 singles. Puff Daddy is all over the charts. You've also got some boy bands really taking off with Hanson releasing MMMBop, Backstreet Boys release an album, and NSYNC debuts. That's about to take over popular radio in the late 90s. And you're getting some debut acts from like Lit and Limp Bizkit, I believe. That's going to kind of shape where alternative rock maybe unfortunately goes for a 5 to 6 year period. Yeah, you've got a lot of big hits that probably aren't the best big pop hits. You know, songs like Barbie Girl are able to do pretty well on the charts by Aqua. But you do have Return of the Mac on there, which is an all-time great slow jams, dance jams. So anything else to add for 97? For me personally, guys, it's kind of a thin year. I know there's probably going to take a lot of backlash on that with people that do like Britpop far more than me. But, you know, for really good albums, I think it's fairly thin. Obviously, like every year as fans of music, there's good stuff. But it's also kind of a blip in my radar. When I look back at my old documents of, like, album reviews, 97 has just, like, fewer entries than almost any other year. So I did go back and try to listen to some stuff that I wasn't familiar with, but none of it like changed my landscape at all. So what do you guys think of 97?
I like 97. I think it's a pretty darn good year. You failed to mention the great Shania Twain's Come On Over. Came out in 97. Huge album. Underrated pop country. And Sarah McLachlan had a big old hit. And I think, not sure if it was the first year for Lilith Fair. That might be 98.
Lilith Fair did debut in 97. It ran 97, 98, 99.
The first year for Ozfest.
Ozfest. There you go. Plenty good metal. But the big thing is definitely the boy bands. You can see them coming. I remember hearing Backstreet Boys in 97 in Canada, where they were big first, and being like, oh, this is pretty catchy. And then a couple of years later, I wanted to shoot myself every time I heard them. But this big sea change coming for sure in 97, right on the precipice.
I remember getting the Zeppelin BBC sessions on CD, and that had a huge impact on me as well.
For me, 97's a solid year, not amazing. It's not as good as 93, 94, 95. It's probably about on the same level as 96 for me.
All right, who's kicking it off with their entries?
All right, for me, I had a good amount to sift through on this. I think there's 10 or 11 real solid albums, and the top 3 for me are they might all be in my top 50 all time. So for me, this is a loaded year at the top. Not quite on 94's level, but as far as the 90s goes, this might have my most albums in the top 100. Let's get to the sort of albums I like, but they had no chance this year. I have Faith No More's final, well, not final because they had one a couple years ago, but final of their original run, album of the year, which is a nice comeback for them after King for a Day, which I didn't like that much. This one's weird, just super weird. I mean, Mike Patton got weirder every year. This is right before he got like super weird, so it's still a catchy rock album. I also got from our neighbors to the north, Our Lady Peace with Clumsy. I really like Rain Maida's voice, just kind of adds a little extra. It's not the most interesting alternative rock in the world, but when you throw in that voice, I really liked it growing up. Not so much anymore, not quite on the same level, but I still think it's a pretty good album. Superman's Dead and Clumsy, and I think the whole album's pretty good. All right, a couple mentions before I get to the top three. So Long, So Wrong by Alison Krauss and Union Station. Really solid album. Surfacing by Sarah McLachlan. I like a lot. I like Sarah McLachlan. Blur's self-titled is pretty decent. Urban Hymns it's like half of one of my favorite albums of all time, but I just don't like half the songs. It's kind of odd. And Foo Fighters, Color in the Shape, also very good, but not quite in the top three. For me, my number three is going to be Supergrass, In It for the Money. I absolutely love this album. I was really upset when I was looking through these years that it came out in 97 because it would have won almost any other year. Just a really cool album. I like I Shoot Coco, but I just freaking love this album. Richard III and We're Only In It for the Money. G-Song. Every song on here is awesome, but it's 97, so they are all the way down in third. Travesty, I know. So now it comes down to two albums that have both been my favorite album of all time at some point in my life. And I didn't want to go first because I wanted to see if this would be a trifecta, but it's not going to be because I'm going to ruin it straight off the bat. My runner-up is OK Computer by Radiohead. Yes, Kramzer killing himself over there. But, it's my second favorite Radiohead. It's not my favorite. The Bends is my favorite album of the 90s, I believe. But OK Computer's like a little bit behind it. And that allowed one more to slip in ahead. And that is going to be Ben Folds 5 with Whatever and Ever, Amen. Always been in love with this album, just the way it sounds, the piano playing, it's a little Joe Jackson, a little Elvis Costello. The bass always, when I was growing up, a big reason I picked up the bass, big reason I started playing the bass was Robert Sledge, just the fuzz on the bass. It's such an overwhelming part of every song. And Ben Folds, I love his voice, I love his piano playing, I love his songwriting. He's angry and kind of sardonic, and he's got a good wit, like, Costello and sort of my favorites now. And he sort of led me into that world. From the, One Angry Dwarf and 200 Solemn Faces, you got Song for the Dumped. He's really angry. It's sort of tongue-in-cheek, though, the whole time. It's not overly aggressive. He can be super pretty on songs like Smoke. He can be fun on Kate. Battle of Who Could Care Less was an awesome song. I always, the lyrics always spoke to me really deeply. He cuts right to me, that Ben Folds. Brick, was the big one. And it's a good song, but, it's probably 7th or 8th on here for me. It's just loaded with good stuff. And, it's probably Behind the Bends is my favorite album of the 90s. Just a phenomenal piece of college, whatever, alt rock, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really fit in anywhere, but I love it. And it was one of the few albums that could dethrone OK Computer, but that's why we do these lists. You never know what's going to happen. 3 worthy choices for number 1, but Ben Folds 5 is the winner for 1997.
Well, at least OK Computer didn't lose to Our Lady Peace, for God's sake. So thank you for that.
All right. I would have bet money that you were going OK Computer. Not as much as I would have bet on Cram going with it, but yeah, I thought, well, we'll see. All right. My near misses: Too Far to Care by Old 97s, Other Songs by Ron Sexsmith, Songs from Northern Britain by Teenage Fan Club, I Can Hear the Heart Beating As One by Yola Tango, and Time Out of Mind by Bob Dylan. Those are all just missing my list. My top 5 are going to be Stranger's Almanac by Whiskey Town, Either Or by Elliott Smith, and then I also came down to 3 for me as well. In It for the Money by Supergrass is one of them. Like Joe said, fantastic album. I think I put it at number 1 on my Supergrass listography. I'm not sure if it still is my favorite, but they have a bunch of albums that I love a lot. Then 4th runner-up, OK Computer by Radiohead. Just missing the top spot. I thought I was going to be the one breaking up the Radiohead trifecta for the second time, but luckily I don't have to carry that guilt with me. My number 1 favorite album of 1997 is Hand It Over by Dinosaur Jr. Really great record. Probably my second favorite Dinosaur Jr. record, right behind Where You Been. I think I've heard at times Jay say that it was his favorite Dinosaur Jr. record. It's really cool, really different, sort of explores a lot of different sonic territory on this record, more so than on most Dinosaur Jr. records. Sadly, it came out after grunge and a lot of the alternative bands were kind of on the downturn, and it got pretty much ignored by the record label. Saw an interview with Jay where he was talking about trying to decide what the single should be, and he hesitated too long, and the record label said, never mind, you don't get a single. So this basically didn't get promoted at all. He would be playing shows on this tour and people wouldn't even know the record was out. But it's really good. It's awesome. So many good songs. I think Alone might be the greatest sounding, just like blanket of guitar noise that has ever been recorded. It sounds so good. But there's other more experimental things, at least for Dinosaur Jr. There's tracks with banjo. There's tracks with trumpet. It's really cool. And if you don't know it, check it out. I love it. Favorite album of 97.
Interesting. I think I would have definitely guessed a lot of you, both of your nominees, but wouldn't have seen the choices for the winners coming. I knew Ben Folds would have made Joe's list. So surprised Elliott Smith didn't get on with Joe as well. But Jason's I saw coming pretty much, although I would have thought the old 97s got on there instead of Dinosaur Jr., actually. I didn't know you liked that Dinosaur Jr. album that much. That Dinosaur Jr. record was in contention for me. So was Time Out of Mind by Dylan. So was Built to Spill's Perfect From Now On. But the ones that are my runners up are going to be I Can Hear the Heart Beating As One by Yola Tango. Everyone kind of knows it as the one with Autumn Sweater on it, but the whole thing is great. I've got Either Or by Elliott Smith as well. It'll be interesting to do the Elliott Smith listography because as I go year to year, it's almost like it goes better for me. So get used to Elliott Smith. I've also got Ladies and Gentlemen, We Are Floating in Space by Spiritualized. A really cool vibe on this record. I got into it when Vanilla Sky came out. The title track is in that movie, and I checked out the whole album and loved it. Really cool musical variety on it that I don't think I'm going to get credit for. And then a bit of a different genre for me. I'm going R&B with Erykah Badu and Baduizm. Listened to this a lot in college in conjunction with the live album she released this year as well, which is terrific. I think she's a great singer, and I love the loungy, relaxed feel of this whole album. But we all know what my winner is. It's my favorite album of all time. It is OK Computer by Radiohead. What do I say about this damn album that we haven't already talked about? If you want a more extensive review of the album, go to the Radiohead list. All 3 of us just compliment the hell out of it because it deserves it. It's a really nice look into the future. I think Jason and I talked extensively about how underrated the bass playing on the entire album is by Colin. Phil Selway's drum work is remarkable. It's just one of those, I would say lightning in a bottle album, but they did, to me, a lot of bottles from album to album. It's got the big hits on it that everyone likes, like Karma Police or No Surprises, Paranoid Android, a lot of people know, but there's really not a bad song on it. Fitter Happier, is just a nice piece of the album that just introduces you to kind of the themes and helps you kind of explore thematically throughout the album. My favorite thing about it is probably Tom's vocals. The range that he's exhibiting in this is just amazing. All of the parts of Paranoid Android come together just perfectly. Yeah, I don't have too much more to say about it other than it just brings all of the things you can like about music into one album. It's poetic, it's thematic, it's got a vision of the future, it's self-reflective and looking outward at the same time. It's got everything to me and just kind of shapes the way I see the world, which is why I love it so much. Subjectively, but objectively, there's a reason why it's one of the most acclaimed albums ever. I mean, it's almost, critical suicide to want to be a major critic in the rock genre and be like, it's okay. And you kind of lose your credibility, it seems like. It's got like 100 or 99.9 on like every website there is, except this one, apparently, because I work with a couple of dopes. But no, I know you guys like this album a lot. Yeah, I don't really have too much more to say about it, or about 97 in general. To speak briefly about the 90s, we were kind of like a little bit on glass going into it. I know Jason in particular, like before we got into the 90s, didn't remember the 90s quite as fondly as I feel like it's showing up for you now. And to me, I think it's kind of because of these later 90s years, which, like I said, for me, 97 was thin, and I think 98 and 99 looked just as thin, unfortunately for me. So it might be a little downhill for me for the rest of the 90s. What do you guys think?
For me, there's nothing really downhill. 98's terrible. I'll just preface that. 96 and 98 are just terrible years. But everything else in the 90s is good. I mean, it's not even close for the 70s or probably the 80s for me. The top of my list, the OK Computers, the bands, the Whatever Never Amens, they're in my top 100, but after that, it's, these are like 250 to 500 range albums. I like them a lot, but as we've gone through the 90s, it's sort of like, yeah, I wish we were still in the 70s.
Yeah, the late 90s and early 2000s is kind of a weird period for me, because as it was happening is probably the period in my life where I was listening to the worst music that I ever listened to. I was kind of getting into some weird stuff. So a lot of what I like from these years is stuff I discovered retroactively. But I think there's a lot of good stuff still, and I don't even think 98's that bad. So I think it'll be good.
98 is the first year I bought a CD with my own money. So look forward to that one, because it's a little embarrassing. I'm not going to give it away.
I think 98 looks potentially to be the worst year yet. The one I think is going to win for me is like barely like a 4 out of 5 star album for me. I don't think there's a lot going in, but I'm with Jason. A lot of the stuff that I do like from this era, I've discovered retroactively, probably like 5 or 6 years behind it. Yeah, it's a little hard to be into as a young adolescent at 11 or 12, Built to Spill and Elliott Smith for exposure reasons and stuff like that. So a lot of these groups I get into retroactively in my late high school years. But I mean, obviously we still love music, and every year is going to have stuff we like, but we got to compare them. Some years have got to be the worst, and it's looking like 98 might be that for me.
I think I'm sticking with 82 being the worst ever. And as far as the 90s go, I still think 90 is the worst, and 92 is surprisingly weak. I expected 92 to be a strong year, and I think that is probably the second weakest year of the decade. And I think for me, 92 is probably going to be the last year that's of that sort of lower quality. Everything else is pretty good.
Poor Joe is like, well, wait till we get to 2010 through 2016.
It's going to be weird because 98 is the first year I listened to new music. And then there's some years where I like know 100 albums and others where I literally know like 3. So I'm going to have to be doing a lot of research on some of these upcoming years. It's going to be interesting.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys out there think of 97, what your picks are, what you think of our picks. What are we going to pick for 98? Or what do you think about our anticipation of not being too thrilled about 98, 99 for some of us. So yeah, let us know what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check us out on social media to find out what listographies we're doing next and what other video we've got coming up. It getting into 2021 now, and as we expand, we want to expand our content too. So trying to get you some different sort of varietal programs and stuff like that. So let us know what you're thinking. I'm Kramzer with Joe and Jason, and OK Computer is the best album of all time. We will see you next time on Listography.